Sometimes you can't keep a curse under wraps. Here's your look at the NECA Toys Universal Monsters Boris Karloff the Mummy. In anticipation for the 90th anniversary of the extraordinary silver screen classic, NECA announces The Mummy will be joining its Ultimate action figure line. Once again, Boris Karloff shines as the ancient mummy in a tale of love transcending death. The sculpt captures the intricate special effects makeup that required 8 hours to apply and 2 hours to remove. Standing in 7-inch scale, the figure comes with premium packaging with interchangeable heads, interchangeable hands, and Egyptian chest that opens. About to look at Boris, but before we do, I'd like to first thank the folks over at NECA Toys that did provide the sample of the Ultimate Mummy figure that we could have a look at in this video. Following to that, let's grab the ruler just to see how tall the figure stands. Boris Karloff, as the Mummy in this case, is 7.5 inches in height, or 19 centimeters tall. I have a couple of other Universal Monster figures we can bring in for some size comparisons, comparing it next to the very cool looking Frankenstein's monster, whose size and stature and the lifts in his shoes make him a much taller figure than the Mummy we're about to have a look at. Now, I have yet to pick up the Wolfman, and I hope that changes soon. In the meantime, though, I've just recently also had a look at another Universal Monster figure, that being the Raphael as Frankenstein's monster, who in this case is actually just a little bit shorter than the Mummy. Speaking of the Mummy, though, in the review of Raphael as Frankie, I did mention that I thought Michelangelo was the Mummy, and checking online, it was in fact Michelangelo who will be played as the Mummy, and that's a figure I'm super excited to see. In the accessory department, Mummy doesn't do too bad at all. In fact, it comes included with the Egyptian chest with scroll inside, comes with a total of 3 interchangeable heads, 2 pairs of interchangeable hands, and then bandages that you can drape on top of his forearms. One thing you may notice, though, is he doesn't come included with a sarcophagus, and those disappointed by the fact that the figure doesn't come included with it, just know that NECA Toys is going to be planning to release a Mummy Accessory Pack. Sitting just a little over $40, it's going to come included with a much larger Egyptian chest and the sarcophagus that you can have the figure sitting inside of. I'm super excited for that. I can understand certainly why they wouldn't have included the sarcophagus, because that would have increased the size of the figure's packaging and also would have made the figure probably double in price. This way, at least collectors can decide for themselves, do I want to just have the Mummy on display, or do I want to go all out like myself and have it displayed with the sarcophagus? I think for that standpoint, it was smart on NECA's part to actually release the accessory set with the sarcophagus as a separate pickup and not included with the initial figure. With that being said, let's get a closer look first of all at the Egyptian chest. Mostly all gray, but you can see some nice additional detailing done in gold. You can see the gods represented on either side of the chest, and that's also represented on the other side also. I don't know if you can see it while I tip it slightly off to the side, that, there's these little tiny stars that they've sort of painted onto the side of the chest. And there's also hieroglyphics also on the top of the chest lid. Now, the lid itself can be removed, quite easily in fact, and putting that to the side, inside you'll actually find the Egyptian scroll. And that's been accomplished only by using paper, but I mean, that's fine as well. It also allows it to be able to roll up. And you can see, probably not a good idea to read this, but at least it gives you the idea that he comes included with the scroll. I love the fact that they included it. And of course, when you roll it up, I do like it, first of all, that they've given it a parchment coloring. And of course, you can easily just roll it up and fit it inside the chest. Although while you are folding it up, you kind of want to make sure that it's folded up a little tighter. The reasoning for that is you don't want the excess sticking up because it's going to squish down when you decide to put the lid on top. The lid actually just has there's a little ledge on the inside of it, and that is the thing that sits and snaps in place, so the chest lid isn't going to fall off on you. Really nice the fact that they would have included this. Put that to the side. The figure also comes included some swappable head sculpts. I guess for that, it's probably the best idea to probably pick the figure up first to show you guys what it looks like with the defaulted head sculpt. This is currently the Mummy in sleep mode. Don't worry, that's going to change in a moment. And I do think that just from the stock head sculpt alone, the amount of work that they put into this head sculpt, and while most of it really is just keeping to the idea of the grays and off-gray colors, I really think the sculpting is probably one of the best I've seen so far from the Universal monsters. Because his eyes are closed, it's probably best to pose this guy with his arms crossed. And that is something you can actually pull off by the fact he does have double hinges on both the elbows. Simply just crisscross applesauce. You can cross the arms like this. You can either have like the head off to the side like this. I'm so tempted, really, to pick up a second one of these mummies. One to display with the eventual release of the sarcophagus, and one to display loose. It's probably going to happen too. But yeah, he does successfully bend the elbows. And again, you can have him laying down in the sarcophagus or having the sarcophagus upright like this. I do like that they did incorporate the double hinge on the elbows. This is a figure I don't think would have worked as well, say, about 10 years or so ago. Like, since NECA has really upped their game when it comes to the additional articulation, is really where a figure like the Mummy comes alive. Speaking of coming alive, though, let's actually have a look at the alternate head sculpts he comes included with as well. Now, again, we've already established the idea that he does have the eyes closed, and what a great looking head sculpt that is. But if you prefer, though, your Mummy to have open eyes instead, then you're pretty much getting the same type of head sculpt with the eyes slightly different. You can see right there. It's kind of really hard to see, in fact, that the eyes are open until you look really close and see that the Mummy is staring right back at you. To change out the head sculpts, super easy. You're just going to hold on to the torso. It's probably best as well to hold on to the neck too, and just twist it back and forth and remove it from the ball peg. Then just take the head that you want to change it to. If you're having, by the way, difficult time getting the head in place, I would certainly recommend, as I always recommend here on this channel, heat the head in hot water. If you don't want to get your figureheads wet, then of course there's always the option of just using the hairdryer. I'm not going to use the sound effect. Just make a few passes and get the head in place. Now, I haven't had too much of an issue doing it off camera. Of course, now that I'm doing it on camera, it's going to be a little bit harder. I'm going to change that up in a second. But that's what it looks like with the eyes open. I'm just going to say it again. It's certainly one of the best I've seen for the Universal monsters, even though I did really like the Frankenstein's monster. If you did want a third option, there's a third option? There is a third option. There's also this one as well, where it looks like he's yawning. He's probably not yawning, though. Again, like the eye, from an eye standpoint, not much does change, although it's really the mouth that does differ from one head sculpt to the other. Again, you can go with that route too. I think for my own personal displaying, until I eventually pick up a second one of these to coincide with the release of the sarcophagus, I think for right now, what I'm planning to do is probably just display this guy with the eyes open, and of course swap out the hands as well. Let's just get the head completely on there for a second. As for the figure's hands, when you get the Mummy out of his cardboard sarcophagus, we've already looked at the fact he does come with these flat hands, which are really good for actually resting against his body, thanks to the aid of the double hinges on his elbows. Now, when it comes to him swapping out the hands, the only side that you can be changing out is this side right here. And that's probably one of the reasons why they've made this hand slightly more relaxed. See the difference between the two hands? This one is completely flat. This one, like I said, is a little bit more on the relaxed side, because when you're changing the hands, sadly, he only has interchangeable hands for this side of his body. The difference in the hands, I'm going to go ahead and grab those right now. The one that has a little bit more of a dynamic pose to it. As you can see, the thumb sticks down a little bit more. The fingers are curled and waved a little bit more. And also, notably, the ring that he wears on his finger is a lot shinier too. And that makes perfect sense. To change out the hands, by the way, and I guess to show you the other one as well, there's this hand too. And really, to look at these hands, they're not that much different from one another. In fact, I would think, if anything, they probably could have included a secondary hand to change on this side of his body. But again, he only seems to come included with hands for this side. Either way, to change the hand, you're going to go ahead and just hold on to the forearm and just wiggle that off. Find a hand you want to go with and just plug that into place. And now you've definitely got a much better hand for if you want to have the Mummy in that sort of more traditional pose of him with his arms extended out like this. Another way that you can also add on to this is to take these extra bandages, something that comes in also included with the figure. And these are, by the way, done in a rubbery plastic. These easily can be draped over top of his, well, you can either drape them over top of his bicep, for example. Let's just slide one down here, for example. Or you can also have it resting more on his elbow, which I'm kind of more leaning towards anyways. And most of the time I've noticed when I do put it further up on his arm, it's only prone to sliding down anyway. So I'm just going to keep it there. And he also comes with another one as well that you can do the exact same thing, just on the other side. And I got to say, that does finish things off rather nicely, doesn't it? Really, I wish they could have also included like maybe one that could have wrapped around his waist just loose that would just drape down to the side. But other than that, I just love the idea that they would have included these extra bandages that could be added onto the mummy. It certainly does make things a little bit more interesting when you're looking at the figure, to have little tassels of bandages draping down from his arm like this. Moving on to the rest of the figure's body. By the way, I did finally find the way to get the head completely in place on top of his neck. Just put a little bit of extra pressure on that. The detailing on just the body alone, I know we've already talked about how good the head sculpt is on the mummy. But then if you move further down from that, just how good the work is on NECA's part, sculpting what would be just an otherwise bandaged body. It's kind of hard to really pull that off successfully when you're thinking about it. There's so much of the same stuff going on here. It's really the amount of paint, the amount of detail that they put to each of the individual bandages, that it's not literally just rinse and repeating the same wrapping all the way down his body. The wrappings do change in different direction, and they are also slightly decayed in different areas as well. Like when you're seeing like the arms and the elbows, for example, you see a lot more of the tattered rags, the holes and the little kind of ripped away parts to his body. He has a little less of it other than when you get to like the abdomen section right here. More cleaner, of course, when you get down to his lower legs, but even where there's just simple wrapping, they've really done a nice job of going in there and adding some much needed paint. I couldn't help but draw the attention to the idea that the mummy has a bit of a flat behind. Of course, the lower half of his body is made of a more softer plastic, and the reasoning, of course, why they did do that is so that it doesn't hinder the articulation when it comes to the figure's legs. We're going to talk more about that in a second. A nice detailing, again, the sculpting of the way they've done the feet. The way they've crossed over, overlapped in some of the cases of the bandages really adds to the level of detail to this figure. And of course, yeah, Mummy does have peg holes on the undersides of his feet. I haven't had any real issues so far of having the figure standing, but yeah, there's of course peg holes on the undersides of his feet. To the point really, to the extent of their sculpting, where you can almost even make out the toes sticking out at the end there. Really nice, the little attentions to detail that they put into the figure. We're going to move off the bandages for just the time being. Of course, we're going to look at the articulation here on the Mummy. Starting, of course, with his head sculpt. The head rotates all the way around. It doesn't matter whether you're using this head sculpt, you're using this head sculpt, or again, if you want to default it back to his eyes being closed, they're going to work all the exact same way. Head looks up, the head looks down, back and forth. And he does also have a secondary ball joint that's at the base of the neck that allows the neck to rotate all the way around as well. Arms comfortably can come out all the way around, or rotates all the way around, I should say. You can also bring the arms out at a 90-degree angle bend, or maybe just a little less than that. He has a swivel at his bicep. The Mummy also possesses a double hinge on the elbow, and he does also have rotations in the hands. One last chance to see the hand, and the additional darker purple that they've added to the skin tone really adds some nice contrasting colors. Again, when you're dealing with a lot of beiges, it really is an opportunity for them to go in there. And I'm really glad to see that they've added all these extra washes, even just to the hair itself, how they've added a more darker coloring of gray. Such a glorious looking figure. Upper torso, yes, and it is on a ball joint. Lower torso, yes, also is on a ball joint. As we already discussed, he can do the splits. You can bring the legs forward and bring the legs back. He has a bend at the knee, rotation in his lower leg, and the figure has not only ankle pivot this way, but also an ankle rocker this way also as well. Let's just get him all settled down here. Of course, as mentioned already, NECA Toys have also released a Wolfman, and they have also shown images of the Bela Lugosi Dracula, which again, I'm super, super excited for. Maybe some people looking at this figure may be a little upset the fact the figure didn't come included with a sarcophagus, and I get that. But I also get the idea as well that if they included a sarcophagus, the cost of adding that to an already figure that's, what, $30 to $35 would probably push this figure closer to being that $70 to $80 price point. And I could say maybe more casual collectors, maybe just only interested to get the Mummy figure. So I think it was smart on their part that they didn't include the sarcophagus with the initial release. Let that be something that collectors could buy as an add-on. Then you can decide for yourself. You don't have to necessarily spend the extra money for something you really aren't going to necessarily use. And then again, one last time, we can bring in the Frankenstein's monster. Now again, I paired this one with the colorized Frankenstein's monster based on all the accessories and the additional coloring on the Mummy. This is the colorized version of the Mummy, but there is also going to be a black and white version. As far as I know, we only are getting the accessory pack in a color treatment. I wonder if they are going to be also releasing the sarcophagus in a gray color scheme to go along with the gray color scheme Mummy that they've also released. A figure that's truly fit for a pharaoh. NECA's Ultimate Mummy gives us not one, not two, but 3 different facial expression head sculpts. Not one, not two, but 4 different hands that you can change out from his forearms. Although at least in the hand department, I really don't think they necessarily needed to include almost two of the exact same hand, only to be changed on the one side of his body anyways. I could see if it was one hand to one side and one hand to the other, but have it literally be all the same forearm that you're changing the hands out to, I really don't think they necessarily needed to include that secondary hand when they're really so close together anyways. The figure also comes included with a couple of cool looking bandages that you can drape off his arms, not to mention the Egyptian chest that stores inside the scroll. Probably not a good idea to be reading that scroll. Bad things may happen. Now, of course, again, if you guys are interested to pick up this figure and get along with it the sarcophagus, just know that the sarcophagus accessory pack is slated to drop in August of 2022. And the price point is going to be about a $40. So while you're spending about that price point for the mummy, you can be spending about the same for the sarcophagus, which makes sense. The sarcophagus is about the same size as the mummy. And as stated already in this review, I don't think it would have made any sense from a standpoint of stocking this to shelf to include a sarcophagus and then have, like the case of the Wolfman being like a $35 price point figure, Frankenstein's monster, $35, and then you get to the ultimate mummy and he would be about $75 to $80 when you factor in the sarcophagus. I think most people would probably pass on that. It's a better idea on NECA's part to include the sarcophagus as a standalone accessory. Then you can decide for yourself again if you wanted to have that with the figure. If you just want to leave it off and get yourself a $30 to $35 mummy to go along with the other Universal monsters, you can also do that as well. Great looking mummy figure. I'm still probably going to stick with the idea of having him in a standing pose with the eyes open head sculpt, but the eventual release of the sarcophagus accessory pack, I think I'm going to probably pick up a second mummy to display sitting inside the sarcophagus. And that's one of the problems that go along with these NECA figures. They're just too good to include all these extra accessories that to leave these head sculpts left back in the cardboard sarcophagus that comes included with this figure. I'm just rather instead to want to display him one with the eyes closed, one with the arms crisscrossed applesauce across his torso, and then the other one kind of what you're seeing right here. Great job though on NECA's part. Super, super excited to see what that sarcophagus is going to look like fully out of the box and with the mummy sitting inside. Can't wait. Big thank you, though, to the folks over at NECA Toys that did provide the sample of the Ultimate Mummy that we could have a look at in this review. What do you guys think of it? Let me know down below in the comments section if you have also been collecting the Universal monsters. Do you think it's a better idea that they included the sarcophagus with the figure? Or do you feel like the sarcophagus should be sold separately, as it certainly would be something that I don't think every casual collector is going to want in their collection space anyways? Let me know down below in the comments section. Better to include the sarcophagus? A better idea on NECA's part to leave the sarcophagus out of this release. Also, if you are new to this channel, you're enjoying the content that you're seeing, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. Turn, yes, the bell notification on so you get those friendly reminders. And while we have wrapped up things, oh, I see what I did there. While we have wrapped up things for the Ultimate Mummy, rest assured, my friends, my colleagues, my viewing audience, there will be more NECA reviews lined up and coming your way. As always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.